Welcome to the Historypedia channel. My name is Peter and today I'm going to tell you about an ancient world history. The Aztec Civilization, also known as the Mexica, was one of the most significant and powerful civilizations in Mesoamerica, located in what is now central Mexico. The Aztecs ruled over a vast empire that stretched from modern-day Mexico into parts of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, with its peak power in the early 16th century. Here are some details about their culture, society, religion, economy, and more. 1. Culture. The Aztecs were known for their complex and sophisticated culture, which included a rich mythology, art, and literature. They also had a sophisticated system of education, which emphasized the training of warriors, priests, and government officials. Music, dance, and poetry were important parts of Aztec life, and they had a complex calendar system that was used for religious and agricultural purposes. 2. Society. Aztec society was organized into a hierarchical system, with the emperor or Tlatoani at the top, followed by nobles, priests, warriors, and commoners. Slavery was also practiced in Aztec society, and slaves were used for various forms of labor, including farming, mining, and domestic work. 3. Religion. The Aztecs had a complex and polytheistic religion, which included the worship of many gods and goddesses. Some of the most important deities included Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and the sun, and Tlaloc, the god of rain and agriculture. Human sacrifice was an important part of Aztec religious practices, and thousands of people were sacrificed each year to appease the gods. 4. Economy. The Aztecs had a sophisticated and complex economy, which was based on a combination of agriculture, trade, and tribute. They were skilled farmers and used advanced agricultural techniques, such as chinampas or floating gardens. They also traded extensively with other Mesoamerican civilizations, and tribute was collected from conquered peoples. 5. Architecture. Aztec architecture was known for its grandeur and sophistication, and many impressive structures were built, including pyramids, temples, palaces, and ball courts. Some of the most famous Aztec structures include the Templo Mayor, the largest temple in the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan, and the Great Pyramid of Calala, which is the largest pyramid in the world by volume. 6. Conquest. The Aztecs were ultimately conquered by the Spanish in the early 16th century, led by Hernán Cortés. The conquest was facilitated by a variety of factors, including the spread of disease, internal conflicts within the Aztec Empire, and the use of superior military technology by the Spanish. The fall of the Aztec Empire marked the end of the Mesoamerican civilizations and the beginning of Spanish colonization in the Americas. Overall, the Aztec civilization was one of the most significant and influential in Mesoamerican history, and their legacy can still be seen in the culture, art, and architecture of modern-day Mexico. Aztec culture was rich and diverse, with many facets that contributed to its unique character. Here are some additional details about Aztec culture. 1. Art. Aztec art was highly stylized and featured intricate designs and bright colors. It included a wide variety of mediums, such as sculpture, painting, and pottery. Aztec art was heavily influenced by their religion and mythology, and many of their artworks depicted gods, goddesses, and supernatural beings. 2. Literature. Aztec literature was mostly oral, with written texts being rare. However, they had a rich tradition of storytelling, and many of their stories and myths have been passed down through generations. These stories were often used to teach important moral lessons and were an important part of Aztec education. 3. Music and dance. Music and dance were important aspects of Aztec culture, and they had a rich tradition of both. They had a wide variety of musical instruments, including flutes, drums, and trumpets, and their music was often used in religious ceremonies and festivals. Dancing was also an important part of Aztec life and was used to celebrate important events and occasions. 4. Clothing. Aztec clothing was highly decorated and colorful, with elaborate designs and patterns. The clothing was often made from cotton or other plant fibers and was designed to be both functional and aesthetically pleasing. The clothing worn by the nobles and rulers was often more elaborate and featured gold, feathers, and precious stones. 5. Food. Aztec cuisine was diverse and varied, with many different ingredients and dishes. Some of the most important staples included maize, beans, and squash. They also ate a wide variety of meats, including fish, turkey, and dog. Chocolate was also an important part of Aztec cuisine and was consumed as a beverage. 6. Education. Aztec education was highly valued, and all children were required to attend school. Education was focused on preparing children for their future roles in society, with boys being trained as warriors and girls being trained as makers. The education system was also highly stratified, with different levels of education available to different social classes. Overall, Aztec culture was diverse and complex, with many different aspects that contributed to its richness and depth. Today, the legacy of Aztec culture can still be seen in the traditions, art, and cuisine of modern-day Mexico. Aztec society was highly structured and hierarchical, with each individual occupying a specific social position based on their birth, gender, and occupation. Here are some key features of Aztec society. 1. Social classes. Aztec society was divided into several social classes, with the highest being the nobles, priests, and warriors. The common people made up the majority of the population and included farmers, artisans, and traders. Slaves also existed in Aztec society, but they were usually prisoners of war or individuals who had been sold into slavery due to debt. 2. Government. The Aztec government was a complex system that included an emperor, nobles, and councils. The emperor was the supreme ruler and had absolute power, but he was advised by a council of nobles and priests. The Aztecs also had a system of local government that was led by a local ruler. 3. Family life. Family was highly valued in Aztec society, and the family structure was patriarchal. Men were expected to be the primary providers for their families, while women were responsible for running the household and raising the children. Women had limited rights in Aztec society, and they were expected to be subservient to their husbands. 4. Education. Education was highly valued in Aztec society, and all children were required to attend school. Education was focused on preparing children for their future roles in society, with boys being trained as warriors and girls being trained as makers. Aztec religion was polytheistic, meaning the Aztecs worshipped multiple gods and goddesses. These gods and goddesses were believed to control various aspects of nature and human life, and the Aztecs believed that by appeasing these deities, they could ensure their continued prosperity and survival. Here are some key facts about Aztec religion and gods. 1. Pantheon of gods. The Aztecs worshipped a large pantheon of gods and goddesses, with each deity having their own unique characteristics and associated myths. Some of the most important Aztec gods and goddesses included Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and the sun; Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god; Tlaloc, the god of rain and fertility; and Xiptotec, the god of agriculture and springtime. 2. Human sacrifice. Human sacrifice was an important aspect of Aztec religion, and it was believed that offering human lives to the gods would ensure the continued existence of the world. Victims of sacrifice were often prisoners of war or individuals who had been purchased as slaves, and they were typically offered to the gods through ritualized ceremonies. 3. Temples and shrines. The Aztecs built elaborate temples and shrines to house their gods and goddesses, with the most important temples located in the capital city of Tenochtitlan. These temples were often decorated with elaborate carvings, sculptures, and paintings, and were staffed by priests who performed daily rituals and ceremonies. 4. Religious festivals. The Aztecs celebrated numerous religious festivals throughout the year, with each festival dedicated to a specific god or goddess. These festivals often included music, dancing, and feasting, and were a way for the Aztecs to show their devotion to their deities. 5. Mythology. Aztec mythology included a rich collection of stories and legends that explained the origins of the world and the Aztec people. These myths often featured gods and goddesses as the main characters, and explored themes such as creation, death, and rebirth. Overall, Aztec religion was a complex and deeply ingrained part of Aztec society, with gods and goddesses believed to control all aspects of nature and human life. Despite the practice of human sacrifice, Aztec religion also placed a strong emphasis on family, community, and devotion to the gods. Huitzilopochtli was one of the most important gods in the Aztec pantheon. He was the god of war, the sun, and human sacrifice, and was considered the protector of the Aztec people. According to Aztec mythology, Huitzilopochtli was born from the womb of his mother Coatlicue, who had been impregnated by a ball of feathers. Coatlicue's other children were jealous of Huitzilopochtli and plotted to kill him, but he was able to defend himself and ultimately emerged victorious. As the god of war, Huitzilopochtli was often depicted wearing a headdress of hummingbird feathers and carrying a serpent-headed spear. He was believed to accompany the Aztec warriors into battle, and it was believed that the souls of those who died in battle would be taken to Huitzilopochtli's realm, where they would continue to serve him. Huitzilopochtli was also closely associated with the sun, and it was believed that he rode across the sky in a golden chariot each day. The Aztecs believed that the sun would not rise without Huitzilopochtli's assistance, and that he had to fight a never-ending battle against darkness in order to ensure the continued existence of the world. Human sacrifice was an important aspect of Huitzilopochtli's worship, and it was believed that by offering human lives to the god, the Aztecs could ensure their continued prosperity and survival. The most important sacrifice to Huitzilopochtli was the one that took place during the festival of Panquetzalistli, where a young warrior was chosen to represent the god and was sacrificed on the temple pyramid. Quetzalcoatl is one of the most well-known and revered gods in Mesoamerican mythology, and was particularly important in the Aztec religion. Known as the feathered serpent, he was associated with wind, rain, and agriculture, and was also believed to be a bringer of culture and civilization. According to Aztec mythology, Quetzalcoatl was born to the goddess Coatlicue and her son, the god of the moon, Mixcoatl. He was one of several gods who created the world, and was credited with the invention of the calendar, writing, and the arts. Quetzalcoatl was often depicted as a human with a serpent's head, or as a serpent with feathers. He was associated with the morning star, which was believed to be a manifestation of his power, and was also linked with the planet Venus. Unlike some other Aztec gods, Quetzalcoatl was not usually associated with human sacrifice. Instead, his worship was characterized by ritualistic offerings of flowers, incense, and food. He was believed to have a benevolent nature, and was seen as a protector of humanity. According to Aztec mythology, Quetzalcoatl was associated with the myth of the fifth sun, which predicted the end of the world in a great cataclysmic event. It was believed that Quetzalcoatl would return from the east, bearing gifts of knowledge and enlightenment, and would lead the people into a new age of prosperity and harmony. Quetzalcoatl was also associated with the practice of self-sacrifice, particularly through the use of bloodalting. Aztec priests would cut themselves or offer their own blood as a tribute to the god, in the belief that this act would strengthen their connection to him and ensure his continued favor. Overall, Quetzalcoatl was a complex and multifaceted deity, who embodied many of the key themes and beliefs of Aztec religion and culture. He was revered as a bringer of knowledge and civilization, and was seen as a protector and patron of humanity. Tlaloc was an important god in Aztec religion, and was associated with rain, fertility, and agriculture. He was one of the four main deities of the Aztec pantheon, along with Huitzilopochtli, Quetzalcoatl, and Tezcatlipoca. Tlaloc was often depicted as a blue-skinned figure with bulging eyes, a large nose, and jaguar-like fangs. He was associated with the element of water, and was believed to have the power to bring rain and ensure the fertility of the land. He was also linked with the mountains, which were seen as the source of the rivers and streams that provided water for crops. Tlaloc was worshipped throughout the Aztec Empire, but was particularly important in regions that relied heavily on agriculture, such as the highlands of central Mexico. His worship was characterized by elaborate ceremonies and offerings, which often involved the sacrifice of animals or even humans. One of the most important festivals associated with Tlaloc was the Tlalakwe, which took place during the rainy season. During this festival, people would fast, abstain from sexual activity, and make offerings to the god, including flowers, food, and precious stones. At the end of the festival, the priests would perform a ritual dance, which was believed to bring rain and ensure the fertility of the land. Tlaloc was also associated with a number of myths and legends, many of which related to the role of water in Aztec culture. One of the most famous myths tells of the creation of the first human beings, who were fashioned from maize dough by the gods. Tlaloc is said to have breathed life into the humans, giving them the ability to grow and cultivate crops, and ensuring their survival. Overall, Tlaloc was an important and highly revered deity in Aztec religion, and played a central role in the Aztec worldview and culture. His worship was closely linked with the importance of water and agriculture in Aztec society, and his power to bring rain and ensure the fertility of the land was seen as crucial for the survival and prosperity of the people. Tziptotec was an important god in Aztec religion, and was associated with agriculture, fertility, and the cycles of life and death. His name means Our Lord the Flayed One, and he was often depicted wearing the skin of a sacrificed human or animal. Tziptotec was particularly important to the Aztec people, who believed that he had the power to renew and regenerate the natural world. He was often associated with the beginning of the agricultural cycle, and was believed to be responsible for the growth of crops and the fertility of the land. One of the most important festivals associated with Tziptotec was the Tlacagziphuiliztli, which took place in early spring. During this festival, prisoners of war or slaves were dressed up in the flayed skin of a human or animal, and were then sacrificed to the god. The shedding of the skin was seen as symbolic of the renewal of life, and the sacrifice of human or animal life was believed to ensure the continued fertility of the land. Tziptotec was often depicted in art wearing the skin of a flayed human or animal, with blood dripping from the exposed muscles and bones. He was also often shown holding a weapon or a bag of seeds, symbolizing his role as both a god of death and a god of fertility. Despite his association with death and sacrifice, Tziptotec was not seen as a cruel or malevolent deity. Rather, he was revered as a powerful and essential force in the natural world, and his worship was seen as necessary for the survival and prosperity of the people. The Aztec political system was a complex and hierarchical system of government that was centered around the emperor, who was known as the Huitlatoni. The empire was divided into a number of smaller states or provinces, each of which was ruled by a local ruler, known as a Tlatoni. The Aztecs believed that the emperor was chosen by the gods, and he was considered to be the supreme ruler of the entire empire. The Aztec political system was organized into a series of administrative units known as calpulli. Each calpulli was responsible for a specific geographic area and was governed by a council of elders, known as the Tlatoni. The Tlatoni were responsible for maintaining order, settling disputes, and ensuring that the laws of the empire were upheld. The Aztecs also had a system of tribute, which was a form of taxation that was collected from the conquered peoples of the empire. The tribute was used to support the imperial court and the armies of the empire, and it was an important source of wealth and power for the emperor. The role of the emperor in Aztec society was both political and religious. The emperor was believed to be a divine figure, and was responsible for maintaining the relationship between the gods and the people. He was also responsible for the construction of religious and ceremonial buildings, and was involved in the organization of important religious festivals and ceremonies. The Aztecs believed that the emperor was responsible for maintaining the balance of the universe, and that he was the protector of the people. The emperor was expected to be a strong and just leader, and was often called upon to make important decisions related to trade, diplomacy, and warfare. The Aztec political system was characterized by a complex hierarchy of rulers and administrators, with the emperor at the top of the pyramid. The system was designed to maintain order and stability, and was based on a combination of religious and political authority. Despite its complexity, the Aztec political system was highly effective, and was able to maintain the empire for several centuries. Here are the names of some of the most notable Aztec emperors. 1. Acamapictli II, Huitzilahutl III, Camalpopoca 4, Itzcoatl 5, Montezumari 6, Axayacatl 7, Tizoc 8, Ahuitzotl 9, Moctezuma II. It is important to note that the Aztecs did not use a traditional European-style calendar, and as such, the dates of the reigns of these emperors are approximations. Additionally, some of the early rulers of the Aztecs may have been legendary or semi-mythical figures, and their reigns may not be historically accurate. Acamapictli was the first Aztec emperor, and his reign is considered to be the beginning of the Aztec Empire. He was born in the early 14th century, and his father was the leader of the Aztec tribe. When his father died, Acamapictli became the new leader of the tribe, and he began to expand his influence over neighboring tribes. During his reign, Acamapictli established the capital city of Tenochtitlan, which would later become one of the largest and most powerful cities in the world. He also built a number of important temples and palaces in the city, and he encouraged the development of trade and commerce. Acamapictli was known as a wise and just ruler, and he was respected by the people of the empire. He established a system of tribute, which was a form of taxation that was collected from the conquered peoples of the empire. This tribute was used to support the imperial court and the armies of the empire, and it was an important source of wealth and power for the emperor. One of the most significant events of Acamapictli's reign was the formation of the Triple Alliance between the Aztecs, the Texcocans, and the Panecs. This alliance allowed the Aztecs to expand their influence over other tribes and regions, and it laid the foundation for the future growth and power of the empire. Overall, Acamapictli's reign was a time of significant expansion and growth for the Aztecs. He established many of the institutions and traditions that would come to define the Aztec Empire, and his legacy would be felt for centuries to come. Huitzilahutl was the second emperor of the Aztecs, succeeding Acamapictli upon his death. He was born in the early 14th century, and like his predecessor, he was the son of the previous Aztec leader. He is believed to have been a powerful warrior and a skilled diplomat. During Huitzilahutl's reign, the Aztec Empire continued to expand, and the emperor oversaw a number of successful military campaigns against neighboring tribes. He also further developed the system of tribute that had been established by Acamapictli, and he used the wealth generated by this tribute to build important public works and monuments in Tenochtitlan. Huitzilahutl is also credited with establishing many of the religious traditions and ceremonies of the Aztec Empire. He was a devout follower of the Aztec gods, and he encouraged the construction of important religious sites and temples throughout the empire. He also established many of the religious festivals and ceremonies that were central to the Aztec faith, including the Festival of the New Fire, which was held every 52 years to mark the beginning of a new cycle in the Aztec calendar. One of the most significant events of Huitzilopochtli's reign was the alliance between the Aztecs and the neighboring city-state of Texcoco. This alliance would prove to be crucial in the future expansion and success of the Aztec Empire, as the two powers were able to cooperate and work together to conquer new territories and defeat their enemies. Overall, Huitzilopochtli was a successful and influential emperor who oversaw a period of significant expansion and development for the Aztec Empire. His legacy would be felt for centuries to come, and his contributions to the culture and religion of the Aztecs would play a significant role in their history and identity. Huitzilopochtli was the third emperor of the Aztecs, succeeding Huitzilopochtli upon his death. He was born in the early 14th century, and like his predecessors, he was the son of the previous Aztec leader. He was known for his military prowess and his dedication to the Aztec religion. During Huitzilopochtli's reign, the Aztec Empire continued to expand, and the emperor led a number of successful military campaigns against neighboring tribes. He also continued to develop the system of tribute that had been established by his predecessors, and he used the wealth generated by this tribute to further expand and develop the city of Tenochtitlan. One of the most significant events of Huitzilopochtli's reign was the Tanec War, which was fought between the Aztecs and the powerful Tanec Empire. The Tanecs had been the Aztecs' allies, but tensions had been rising between the two powers for some time. Huitzilopochtli led the Aztec forces to victory in this conflict, which greatly expanded the power and influence of the Aztecs in the region. Huitzilopochtli was also known for his religious devotion, and he oversaw the construction of many important religious sites and temples throughout the empire. He was particularly devoted to the goddess Huitzilopochtli, and he established many of the religious ceremonies and traditions that were associated with this deity. Unfortunately, Huitzilopochtli's reign was cut short when he was captured and executed by the Tanecs in 1427. His death was a major blow to the Aztecs, as he was a popular and respected leader who had overseen a period of significant growth and expansion for the empire. Despite this setback, however, the Aztecs were ultimately able to recover and continue to expand their power and influence under the leadership of Huitzilopochtli's successor, Itzcoatl. Itzcoatl was the fourth emperor of the Aztecs, succeeding Huitzilopochtli upon his death. He was born in the early 14th century and was the nephew of his predecessor. Itzcoatl is remembered as one of the most important and influential emperors of the Aztec Empire. During Itzcoatl's reign, the Aztecs faced a number of significant challenges, including a rebellion in the city of Tlatelolco and ongoing conflicts with neighboring tribes. However, Itzcoatl was a skilled military leader and was able to successfully navigate these challenges. One of the most significant achievements of Itzcoatl's reign was the creation of the Triple Alliance between the Aztecs, the city of Texcoco, and the city of Tlacopan. This alliance allowed the Aztecs to greatly expand their territory and influence, and it laid the groundwork for the establishment of a vast empire that would dominate central Mexico for centuries to come. Itzcoatl was also known for his efforts to reform and strengthen the Aztec government. He established a system of tribute that was more efficient and organized than previous systems, and he created a professional military that was better trained and equipped than the Aztec armies of the past. In addition to his political and military accomplishments, Itzcoatl was also a patron of the arts and sciences. He oversaw the construction of many important religious and cultural sites throughout the empire, and he encouraged the development of new artistic and intellectual traditions. Itzcoatl died in 1440, but his legacy lived on in the form of the powerful and influential empire he had helped to create. His reign marked a turning point in Aztec history, and his achievements paved the way for the many successes that the empire would enjoy in the centuries to come. Moctezuma was the fifth emperor of the Aztecs, succeeding Itzcoatl upon his death. He was born in the early 1400s and was the nephew of his predecessor. Moctezuma is remembered as a wise and just ruler who helped to further strengthen and expand the Aztec Empire. During Moctezuma's reign, the Aztecs continued to expand their territory through conquest and diplomacy. Moctezuma was a skilled diplomat and was able to negotiate alliances with neighboring tribes and kingdoms, further increasing the power and influence of the Aztec Empire. Moctezuma was also known for his efforts to reform and improve the Aztec government. He continued many of the policies and practices that his predecessor had established, but he also introduced several new reforms of his own. For example, he established a new system of taxation that was more equitable and efficient than previous systems. In addition to his political accomplishments, Moctezuma was also a patron of the arts and sciences. He oversaw the construction of many important cultural and religious sites throughout the empire, including the Great Temple in Tenochtitlan. Moctezuma died in 1469, but his legacy lived on in the form of the powerful and influential Aztec Empire he had helped to build. He was succeeded by his son, Axayacatl, who continued many of his father's policies and helped to further expand the empire. Axayacatl was the sixth emperor of the Aztecs, succeeding his father Moctezuma upon his death. He was born in the mid-1400s and reigned from 1469 until 1481. Axayacatl was a warrior king who continued the expansion of the Aztec Empire through military conquest. During Axayacatl's reign, the Aztecs launched a series of military campaigns against neighboring tribes and kingdoms. He led several of these campaigns himself and was known for his tactical and strategic prowess on the battlefield. His conquests expanded the Aztec Empire to its greatest territorial extent, covering much of central Mexico. In addition to his military accomplishments, Axayacatl was also known for his efforts to further strengthen and centralize the Aztec government. He reformed the army and introduced new military strategies that helped the Aztecs to maintain their dominance over the region. He also established new laws and regulations that helped to promote social order and stability within the empire. Axayacatl was also a patron of the arts and sciences. He commissioned the construction of several important cultural and religious sites, including the Temple of Huitzilopochtli in Tenochtitlan. He also supported the development of astronomy, medicine, and other fields of knowledge. Axayacatl died in 1481, possibly as a result of a disease epidemic that swept through the region. He was succeeded by his brother Tizoc, who continued many of his policies and military campaigns. Tizoc was the seventh emperor of the Aztecs, succeeding his brother Axayacatl upon his death in 1481. He was born in the mid-1400s and reigned from 1481 until 1486. Tizoc is remembered as a somewhat weak and ineffective ruler who was unable to maintain the military and political successes of his predecessors. During Tizoc's reign, the Aztecs faced several challenges and setbacks. The empire was hit by a devastating epidemic that killed many people, including members of the royal family. This weakened the empire's military and political power and made it more vulnerable to external threats. Tizoc also faced challenges from within the empire. He was unpopular with many of the nobles and officials who resented his weak leadership and lack of military success. This led to several uprisings and rebellions within the empire. Despite these challenges, Tizoc did make some efforts to strengthen and centralize the Aztec government. He introduced new laws and regulations that helped to promote social order and stability. He also commissioned the construction of several important public works projects, including a causeway that connected Tenochtitlan with the mainland. Tizoc died in 1486, possibly as a result of poisoning by his own nobles who were unhappy with his rule. He was succeeded by his brother Huitzotl, who was a much stronger and more successful ruler than Tizoc. Huitzotl was the eighth emperor of the Aztecs, succeeding his brother Tizoc in 1486. He was born around 1428 and reigned until his death in 1502. Huitzotl is remembered as one of the most successful and powerful Aztec rulers, credited with expanding the empire to its greatest territorial extent and overseeing significant cultural and religious developments. During his reign, Ahuitzotl launched several successful military campaigns and expanded the Aztec Empire to its greatest extent, with control over large parts of Mesoamerica, including modern-day Mexico, Guatemala, and Honduras. He also oversaw the construction of several important public works, including a grand temple dedicated to the god Huitzilopochtli in the heart of Tenochtitlan. Ahuitzotl was also a patron of the arts and culture, commissioning the creation of many important works of Aztec literature and codices. He also oversaw significant religious and cultural developments, including the construction of a new temple dedicated to the god Tlaloc and the establishment of a new festival in honor of the god Xiptotec. Despite his successes, Ahuitzotl's reign was not without controversy. He was accused of being a ruthless and tyrannical ruler who was willing to use violence and intimidation to maintain his power. He also oversaw significant human sacrifices, with estimates suggesting that tens of thousands of people were killed during his reign as offerings to the gods. Ahuitzotl died in 1502, possibly as a result of a plague that swept through Tenochtitlan. He was succeeded by his nephew Moctezuma II, who was also a successful and powerful ruler, but who faced significant challenges and ultimately saw the collapse of the Aztec Empire. Moctezuma II, also known as Moctezuma II, was the ninth and last Aztec emperor, who ruled from 1502 until his death in 1520. He was born around 1466, and was the nephew of the previous emperor, Ahuitzotl. Moctezuma II's reign was marked by significant changes and challenges, as the Aztec Empire faced threats both from within and without. During his reign, he oversaw significant construction projects, including the expansion of the Great Temple in Tenochtitlan, which was dedicated to the gods Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc. Moctezuma II is perhaps best known for his interactions with the Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés, who arrived in Mexico in 1519 with a small army. Moctezuma initially tried to appease the Spanish by offering them gifts and hospitality, but he soon realized that they posed a significant threat to the Aztec Empire. Cortés took advantage of internal divisions within the Aztec Empire, and eventually captured Moctezuma and took him hostage. After Moctezuma's capture, the Spanish gained control of Tenochtitlan and began a brutal campaign of violence and exploitation, including the looting of the Great Temple and the execution of Aztec leaders. In 1520, a rebellion broke out in Tenochtitlan, and Moctezuma was killed during the fighting. His death marked the beginning of the end for the Aztec Empire, which was conquered by the Spanish in 1521. Moctezuma II is remembered as a tragic figure in Aztec history, who was unable to prevent the collapse of his empire in the face of overwhelming external forces. Despite this, he is also celebrated as a great Aztec leader, who oversaw significant cultural and religious developments during his reign, and who fought bravely to defend his people and his way of life. The Spanish conquest of the Aztecs began in 1519, when the Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés arrived in Mexico with a small army. The Aztec Empire, led by Moctezuma II, initially welcomed the Spanish as they believed them to be representatives of the god Quetzalcoatl, but tensions soon developed as the Spanish began to exploit the Aztecs and seize their wealth. Cortés took advantage of internal divisions within the Aztec Empire and formed alliances with rival tribes who were also opposed to Aztec rule. He was also able to convince many Aztec subjects to join his cause by promising them greater autonomy and freedom from Aztec rule. In 1520, a rebellion broke out in Tenochtitlan, and the Spanish were forced to flee the city. This event, known as the Nitriste, was a major setback for the Spanish, but they regrouped and returned to Tenochtitlan the following year with a larger army. The Spanish laid siege to the city and eventually captured it, with Moctezuma II dying during the fighting. Following the fall of Tenochtitlan, The Spanish consolidated their power in Mexico and began a campaign of violence and exploitation, including the enslavement of indigenous people and the seizure of their land and resources. Diseases introduced by the Spanish also decimated the indigenous population, with estimates suggesting that up to 90% of the population may have died from smallpox and other diseases. Despite fierce resistance from indigenous groups, the Spanish were able to establish a colonial empire in Mexico that lasted for over 300 years. The legacy of the conquest is still felt in Mexico and throughout the Americas today, with debates continuing over the long-term effects of Spanish colonization and the ongoing struggle for indigenous rights and recognition. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned.